Many times when things seem to stop working, when everything is on hold and the world feels silent around us, our mind tends to believe it is being forgotten, ignored, or even punished. But what if, on the contrary, this moment is exactly the answer to the request you made with such intensity? It's not uncommon that, before any great change, a time of apparent setback emerges. Life's rhythm, as mysterious as it may seem, doesn't move in a straight line, but in cycles, flows, and tides. And understanding this is essential to get through these periods without returning to what no longer serves you. There is an invisible logic operating behind what we call nothing is happening. When you plant a seed, you don't demand that it bloom instantly. You know that even beneath the soil something is transforming. In the same way, life begins to prepare you for the new in a silent, deep, and sometimes unsettling way. The universe does not deliver what you desire based on how much you want it, but on how much you are able to sustain it. And this is the point many don't realize. Wanting is the beginning, but sustaining is what determines if reality can truly become yours. You may have asked for lightness, for more clarity, for true relationships, for a life with more purpose. But the question that echoes in the margins of time is, are you prepared for all this without losing yourself? Because what the universe observes is not your intention at the peak of motivation, but your posture when nothing around validates your journey. Trials are not punishments. They are refined ways of revealing where internal cracks still exist. And this does not happen to break you, but to strengthen your structure before the delivery. There is a critical moment in any process of change, that instant when everything begins to deconstruct on the inside, even if on the outside, everything seems the same. You begin to notice that certain people, habits, or responses that once made sense now feel distant, heavy, or simply misaligned with who you are becoming. And this misalignment is a disguised blessing. It shows that the inner space is opening, and that what used to occupy that space no longer has a place in the new frequency you are assuming. What happens at this point is subtle, but transformative. Situations begin to repeat old patterns, not to imprison you, but to see if you still respond the same way. An invitation not accepted, a difficult conversation that returns, a toxic behavior that resurfaces. All of this appears not to test your worth, but your consistency. Because it's easy to sustain a new version of yourself when everything is light. The true test is to remain aligned when nothing supports your new inner state. Carl Jung said that true transformation only happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. And this awareness does not come through motivational phrases, but through raw and real experiences. It's not intellectual knowledge that transforms you, but the way you react, choose, respond, and behave in the face of pain, doubt, and the absence of guarantees. The universe is not impressed by your theory about change. It moves when your actions begin to reflect who you've decided to be, even when the world has yet to recognize you that way. During this period, it's common to feel like everything is being taken from you: stability, certainty, connections. But what's leaving is not the essential. It's the excess, what was taking up space and blocking life's natural flow. It's as if existence is saying, if you want to carry something new, you need to let go of what's anchoring you to what has already ended. And letting go is not about disregarding the past, but recognizing that it has fulfilled its role. Letting go is an act of courage, especially when there is still emotional attachment to what no longer fits. You are not being sabotaged by life. You are being refined by it. There is a refinement happening every time you choose truth over comfort, and this is not always visible. The deepest movements of the soul make no noise. They don't need an audience. They don't ask for approval. The life you want to build demands that you already begin to act as someone who deserves to live it. Not tomorrow, not after everything is resolved, but now, while it's still hard, while it still hurts, while it still doesn't make sense. At this stage, what was once just theory becomes practice. You stop merely thinking about trust and start trusting even without a map. You stop talking about self-knowledge and begin observing yourself with brutal honesty. And this is an invisible but definitive turning point, because your vibration begins to change, and that alters what you attract, what you accept, and even what you tolerate. The universe notices this, not by what you say, but by what you emanate, by your silent presence that says, "I am here whole even when everything is under reconstruction." When you start to change on the inside, even if no one notices immediately, there is a subtle shift in the way you walk through the world. It's no longer about trying to prove something to others or chasing signs to validate your choices. True change happens when you become the confirmation you were seeking. This moment is silent, often lonely, but incredibly powerful. It's when you look around and realize that nothing has visibly changed, but inside nothing is the same. This is when the universe intensifies the tests, not because it doubts you, but because now it wants to be sure that you are not just playing a new role, but that you have truly become this new version. Situations return in different forms, old pains resurface with new nuances, and you have the chance to react as someone who has learned, or repeat as someone who still needs more time. There is no judgment, only observation. Because life does not demand perfection, it seeks integrity. This integrity is what you maintain even when you are alone. It's what you choose when no one is watching. It's how you treat yourself when the world is not applauding you. You are no longer waiting to see what happens out there, to then decide how you feel. You begin to set your frequency from the inside out. And that requires a strength that is not rehearsed, but built in each honest choice, even in the midst of uncertainty. It is at this point that emptiness appears, and it doesn't come as punishment, but as an invitation. The invitation to truly inhabit yourself. The silence that frightens is the necessary space for the new reality to find where to settle. There is no more external noise to serve as a distraction. What remains is you and your own presence. And that, as uncomfortable as it may seem at first, is the greatest opportunity for alignment you can receive. Because in that place of stillness, the masks fall, the fears speak loudly, and the old patterns try to seduce you back to the familiar. But you are learning to recognize these internal traps, that voice that says it won't work, that it's better to go back, that it's taking too long. All these voices are not your true self. They are parts of you shaped by survival, urgency, the need for control. They speak loudly, yes, but they no longer command as before. And that is already a victory. Not because you silenced them forever, but because now you hear them with awareness, without blindly giving in. You realize that discomfort is not a sign of error, but a sign of expansion. Each time you choose to stay, even without guarantees, you reinforce to the universe, "I am this new version, not just in thought, but in practice." And the universe responds, not with fireworks or immediate rewards, but with alignment. Small synchronicities begin to appear, unlikely encounters, inexplicable sensations of lightness, even amid confusion. And you know, something is changing, because you have changed. There is a deep turning point when you stop chasing and start walking with yourself. When you trade anxiety for care, pressure for presence, desperation for inner silence. This shift isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or headlines, but it is there in that seemingly ordinary point that real magic happens. Because you are no longer someone waiting for a new reality. You are already living as someone who knows it is on its way. And that is enough. In fact, if you're still here listening to this, maybe it's because something in you recognizes this journey. Maybe you're going through that moment when everything seems still, where life has gone silent and the signs have disappeared. Maybe it hurts more than you expected. But if you're still here, it's because you haven't given up. And that persistence, even in silence, is one of the most powerful ways to tell the universe that you're ready for something greater. And if this video found you in this moment, then it's more than content, it's a mirror. It probably spoke to a part of you that had been forgotten, silent, or tired, so I invite you to stay. Subscribe, because the purpose of this channel is to light a path that sometimes feels too dark to walk alone. As you choose to keep going, even when everything feels stagnant, you begin to notice nuances that once went unnoticed. A silence that no longer sounds like abandonment, but like a necessary pause. A difficulty that no longer seems like punishment, but an exercise of inner strength. Your vision changes, and with it, everything begins to reposition. Not because the outside world has magically transformed, but because your perspective now comes from a steadier center. What once paralyzed you now only teaches you. The tests that arise at this point stop being obvious. They're no longer major collapses, but subtleties. A message that doesn't come, a delayed response, a plan that needs to wait. And what the universe observes is, will you give in to impatience or choose to trust the process? Will you demand guarantees or continue even without the slightest certainty that you're on the right path? This is when you realize that true manifestation is not what you attract, but what you are able to sustain even without seeing it. The mind will always seek control, clarity, security. But the soul operates at a different rhythm. It blooms in presence, in surrender, in listening to what has no name. And it's in this contrast that the deepest conflicts are born. The mind wants to run away while the heart invites you to stay. The old version of you screams for predictability, while the new one just breathes and anchors. And this inner clash is not a sign that you're failing, but that something is being reorganized at a deep level, far beyond the rational. It's normal to feel tired in this crossing. After all, changing on the inside without anything changing on the outside demands rare energy. It's like holding a new frequency in the midst of a world that still vibrates in the old one. But what you might not have realized yet is that, even without visible results, you are already shaping the ground. The new reality doesn't arrive to transform you. It arrives because you have already become the person capable of living it. And that is as silent as it is powerful. At this point, many give up, because they expect the reward to come quickly, the universe to signal clearly, the new to knock on the door with a set date and time. But what few understand is that the greatest sign that everything is changing is the way you deal with the absence of signs. Your patience became steadiness. Your pain became wisdom. Your silence became home. And those who find home within themselves are no longer lost in any storm. The tests now are about stability. The universe already knows you want the new. But can you live as someone who already is that new, even on cloudy days? Can you respect yourself, even when there's no reflection of that around you? Can you hold on to your truth, even without an audience? These questions have no ready answers, but they're asked every day through the small choices you make when no one is watching. And the most beautiful part is that you don't have to be perfect to keep going. You just have to be honest with yourself. Transformation doesn't require you to always be at peace, but to be present. It doesn't demand that you never doubt, but that even with doubt, you don't abandon yourself. The universe responds to coherence, not appearance. And coherence is when your gesture matches your intention, when your action confirms your vibration. You're no longer seeking the external to fill your voids. Now you look within, and even if you find shadows, you stay. You learn to live with them, to talk to them, to no longer mistake yourself for them. Your darkness stops being an enemy and becomes part of the landscape. And this, according to Jung, is one of the deepest forms of spiritual maturity, to make conscious what was once rejected. At this stage, manifestation becomes less about getting something and more about living something. You stop desiring a new reality as if it were a prize and begin to inhabit it, even if only in an initial version. You take better care of yourself, speak with more intention, choose with more discernment. You begin to protect your energy not out of fear, but out of love. And this kind of posture changes everything, because it shows the universe that you're no longer just ready to receive, but fit to sustain what comes. There comes a moment when you look back and realize that, despite the pain, the waiting, and the uncertainties, something in you remained firm. And maybe that's exactly what defines emotional maturity. Not the absence of breakdowns, but the choice to keep going, even with a trembling heart, even when nothing seems to make sense. Real strength doesn't shout, doesn't demand attention. It stays. It sustains. And that's why even when it seems like nothing happened, in truth, everything inside you has already been reorganized. You've become someone who no longer begs for answers, but who has learned to make silence a place of encounter. Waiting is no longer an obstacle. It has become the field where your new identity was cultivated. And it doesn't matter if external circumstances haven't yet followed this movement. The vibration you now sustain is what begins to attract experiences compatible with who you've become. Not because you shouted to the universe what you wanted, but because you live as if you had already received it. With lightness, with truth, with wholeness. When you stop acting like someone who needs to be saved and start acting like someone who is whole, the universe listens. It listens not to what you say, but to the frequency you emanate through silent choices. Each time you respect yourself, even when it would be easier to abandon yourself, you are writing a new reality. Each no you say to what drains you, each yes you give to what brings you closer to yourself, are codes that reorganize your path. And then life begins to change. Not with noise, but with subtle synchronicities. An opportunity that arises unexpectedly, an invitation that makes sense, a response that arrives without warning. Nothing seems planned, but everything fits. Because now there is space. Because now there is consistency. Because now what you asked for has found a place to land. And the universe, which had been observing in silence, begins to respond in the same measure as your emotional maturity. Carl Jung said that what you do not bring to consciousness appears in your life as fate. And fate, in this new time, is no longer something that drags you without control. It becomes a consequence of your presence, your responsibility, your choice to become who you came to be. You stopped running from yourself. You stopped hiding behind roles created to please or protect. You now show up whole, even without guarantees, and that changes everything. If there is still pain, know this. It's not because you're wrong, it's because you're crossing. Crossing is not quick. Crossing is not simple, but it is transformative. Pain now is not a sign of error, but of purification. It's cleansing what still remained of the old. And every time you choose to continue, even through tears, the universe takes note. Not to judge you, but to align you with what you already are inside, but had not yet manifested outside. You no longer need to rush. What is yours will not come through anxiety, but through frequency. The frequency of wholeness, of calm, of truth, and it is already in motion. There's no turning back. The old version can no longer sustain your steps. The new one is still taking shape, but it's already real. Even invisible, it already vibrates, and the world, sooner or later, will follow this new dance. And now, with all that you've lived, with each layer of you that has been recovered, with each fragment gathered, maybe it's time to allow this process to continue. Not with effort, but with surrender. You're no longer trying to control everything. You're walking with life, and that is liberating. If you felt that this video was more than a reflection, if it found a space within you that needed truth and not ready-made formulas, then receive this moment as a hug. A reminder that you are not alone in this journey, and that there is an entire community walking with awareness and courage by your side. If you want to join us, subscribe here to the channel. Know that each new person here brings a new frequency to this space, and this space is made of people like you, who chose not to give up. And if you want to share something, leave your story here in the comments, what you're going through or what you learned from this video. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be true. Because in the end, what connects us is not what we have, but who we are becoming.